series of basics of interpretation of statutes. In this video, we will talk about purposive rule of interpretation, its advantages, disadvantages, and relevant case laws. Before proceeding with the video, please subscribe to the channel. Now, the purposive rule of interpretation, as the name suggests, focuses on the purpose, or we can say the aim and object of the law with which it is enacted. Now, whenever there is an ambiguity with regard to the interpretation of a law, in that case, the court refers to the aim and object of the law and then interprets the provision. Now, this rule emerges out of mischief rule of interpretation, which focuses on the defect and remedy, and the interpretation is given which will defeat the defect or mischief and upholds the remedy. Whereas under purposive interpretation, we focus on the purpose of the law. Now, there is a very thin line difference between the defect of the law and its remedy, and on the other side, the purpose of the law. Let's understand the difference with an example. Now, if we talk about the maintenance provision given under criminal procedural law, earlier it was section 125 of CRPC and now it's section 144 of Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, which provides maintenance to the wife, children, and to the parents. Now, the question arises why the maintenance provision is provided in the criminal procedure law when we already have personal laws providing maintenance to the people. Now, we added the provision of maintenance under criminal procedure law because there was no uniformity in different religions. So, to bring uniformity in the law, and secondly, there was a delay in disposal of maintenance application under personal laws. So, to defeat that and to make a quick remedy, the provision is added under criminal procedure law. So, the defect was delay and non-uniformity, and the remedy was provided where there is a quick disposal. Secondly, it is applicable to all uniformly. Now, this was the defect and the remedy. And if we talk about the purpose of this provision, then purpose of this provision is to prevent destitute and vagrancy, which means to prevent a person to live a life of poverty or helplessness. Now, this is the purpose. If we look at the defect and the purpose, we found out that the purpose is a wider concept which takes into consideration social, economic, or political factors as well, whereas defect or mischief is a narrower concept. Now, in the present time, mischief rule is not applied by the courts and only the purposive interpretation is used by the courts to interpret the law. Now, let's understand the purposive rule with case laws. The first case is under section 144 of Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, which was earlier section 125 of CRPC. It deals with maintenance. Now, the provision says that the husband is bound to maintain his wife. Here uses wife, which means a legally wedded wife, means a wife of a valid marriage, and it also includes divorced wife if she has not remarried. Now, in the case of Urmila Badshah Godse, a question arises whether a lady of void marriage can claim maintenance under section 125 of CRPC, which is now section 144 of Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita. The facts of the case is that the lady married to her husband without having any knowledge that he is already a married person, and a child born out of that wedlock. Now, the second marriage of the husband is a bigamous marriage, but and when the lady came to know about the previous marriage of the husband, she made a dissent with the husband and filed an application for maintenance under section 125 of CRPC. Now, the husband contended that wife is not entitled for maintenance because she is not a legally wedded wife as per section 125, because it's a second marriage. Now, the court held that if we keep in view the purpose of the law, which says that we need to prevent destitute and vagrancy, here we need to interpret the term wife in a wider sense and should include also a wife of a void marriage. It means a bigamous marriage, provided the wife is not aware about the husband's previous marriage. If the wife is aware about the previous marriage, then she is not entitled for maintenance. Only in case where was no knowledge of the previous marriage, then wife is entitled for maintenance under section 125 of CRPC, because husband is not entitled to take advantage of his own wrong. Now, here the wife is given a wider meaning, keeping in view the purpose and object of the law. Now, second case is under the POCSO Act, that is Attorney General of India versus Tish. In this case, question arises with regard to Section 7 of the POCSO Act, that is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Now, Section 7 of POCSO Act analyzes touching of private parts or any other physical contact with sexual intent. Now, in this case, the Bombay High Court interpreted the term touch and physical contact in a narrower sense and held that to make the act punishable under Section 7, it is mandatory that there should be a skin to skin contact. Only then the act of the offender is made punishable under Section 7. But when the matter reached Supreme Court, the Supreme Court held that the object of the POCSO Act is to protect children from any kind of sexual abuse. If we give such a narrow interpretation, in that case, we will not be able to protect children from sexual abuse, because in that case, the offender will use some kind of shield to make abuse of the children. Like they can use gloves, they can use condoms, or they can use cloth before touching the child. In that case, by this interpretation, we cannot penalize those offenders. Their touch and physical contact under Section 7 need not be a skin to skin contact. Now, here also the court used the purposive interpretation to interpret the term touch and physical contact and gave an interpretation which will uphold the purpose of the law. The first advantage is that it makes the law flexible. Now, if we talk about the case law here, if we apply the literal let's meaning talk about the advantages of then the purpose of the law will become redundant. Therefore, the purposive rule will help to make the law flexible. Secondly, it also helps to uphold the legal intent of the legislature. Thirdly, it helps to make the law dynamic. It means we can interpret the law keeping in view the modern social and economic conditions. Now, first disadvantage is that it gives extreme power to the judiciary. As a result, the judiciary lays down the law. Advantages not actually the disadvantages of the law, as and therefore it violates doctrine of separation of power. The second disadvantage is that the interpretation under this rule is given keeping in view the purpose, but it gives wide discretion to the judiciary to interpret the provision widely. Now, question arises how wide the interpretation can be given. There is no restriction on it. Therefore, it will vary from judge to judge how widely he wants to interpret the provision. Now, this leads to subjectivity as well as bias. Thirdly, it leads to violation of legal intent because the legislature expresses its intention through words, whereas under purposive interpretation, the words are not given much importance and more importance is given to the aim and object of the law. So these are the major advantages and disadvantages of the law.